The ancient city of Samarkand is known as a crossroad of the Great Silk Road. Throughout its centuries-old history, Samarkand was a place where cultures and traditions of different peoples coexisted in peace and harmony. Bukharian Jews are an integral part of the history, economy and culture of Samarkand. This release is the continuation of the series about Bukharian Jews. Here we tell you more about Jewish diaspora of Samarkand and its famous representatives. If you haven't subscribed to our channel, we advise you to do it immediately. We will always have lots of interesting things for you. So, let's start everything in order. There isn't much historical information about Jews appearing in Samarkand. For instance, in the first half of the 12th century, a historic An-Nasafiy in his book Small Kandiya mentions about Jews in Samarkand, where he tells about a Jew who built leaden aqueduct with name Juyi Arziz. In European sources, in the second half of the 12th century, Benjamin Tudelsky, in his Book of Travels, narrates, from Isbagan, Isfahan, 4 days' journey to the Persian land of Shiraz, where about 10,000 Jews live. From there, at a distance of 7 days' journey, the large city of Jina, Khiva, stands on the banks of the Gozan, Amudarya river. There are up to 8,000 Jews in it. A trading city where merchants of all nations in the world come with goods is located on a vast plain. In a distance of 5 days' journey lies on the border of the Persian kingdom the large city of Samarkand. There are up to 50,000 Jews in it, among whom there are scientists and the rich. The history of Samarkand, like any other ancient city, is multifaceted. The city has experienced numerous ups and downs. So, for example, according to Meyendorff's information, in 1820 there were only 10 Bukharian Jewish houses in the city. Since the second half of the 19th century, recognizing the great potential of Samarkand in trade with Russia, Bukhara Jewish merchants and artisans have moved here. These contributed to economic growth in Samarkand. According to the historian Alexander Lehman, who traveled to Samarkand, the number of Jews in 1841 reached 500 people. The Jews of Samarkand until the first half of the 19th century lived separately in different quarters of the old city. Only in March 1843 the Jewish community in Samarkand acquired a land plot with an area of 11 tanop. Historians estimate this territory around 3 hectares. This territory was located not far from the famous Richest square and was bought for 10,000 tangas. Thus, the Jewish quarter Mahallei Yahudiyon was created, which was symbolically divided into 12 sections. This number corresponded to the number of the 12 tribes of Israel. But, as you know, there are usually specific people behind progress and prosperity. Moshe Kalontar played an important role in the formation of the Bukhara Jewish quarter in Samarkand. The name of this headman of Bukharian Jews of the 19th century will forever remain in the history of not only Samarkand but also many cities of Central Asia. This man was a faithful keeper of Bukhara Jewish traditions and a real diplomat who in a difficult period in the history of Samarkand managed to be the protector and leader of his people, to resolve the issues of his diaspora peacefully. It was Moshe Kalantar who contributed to the acquisition of a land plot in Samarkand for the development of an entire Jewish quarter in 1843. The biography of Moshe Kalantar is very interesting. He was born in 1815 in the family of Iliev Abdul Kair and Kano in the city of Shahrisabz. It was the third largest city of the Bukhara Emirate at that time. Those were hard times for Bukharian Jews. At the age of 10, Moshe lost his father, and the orphaned family secretly moved to Samarkand. At first, Moshe and his brother made their living working as water carriers. They also mastered the profession of fabric and yarn dyers. Nasrullah Batur Khan, and a future Bukhara Emir Nasrullah, before his enthronement, was the ruler of Samarkand, where he became close to rich Jews. Once, near the Richest square, he met the Savi Moshe and appointed him a Kalantar, that is, the headman of the community. Thus, Moshe became the first officially appointed head of the Samarkand Jewish community. He was then only 22 years old. Status Kalantar gave him administrative and legal power within his community. Kalantar was also a tax collector. Very quickly, thanks to his organizational skills and high moral qualities, Moshe Kalantar won the respect of his fellow tribesmen. He was able to unite all Samarkand Jews. Thanks to his diplomatic qualities, the quarter of Bukharian Jews was bought, built up, and prospered. It should be pointed that during the years of his leadership, no conflicts arose between the owners of the plots around the settlement and the Jews. After the conquest of Samarkand by Tsarist Russia in 1868, Moshe Kalantar managed to show his loyalty to the new government. He established friendly relations with Governor General Kaufman and received an award from him, 2 gold medals for bravery and help. In 1878, Moshe Kalantar managed to solve another problem. There was no separate Jewish cemetery in Samarkand. He personally led and organized construction work for the arrangement of the cemetery. But the headman was seized by a sunstroke, and soon from the consequences of this disease he died. His bust can still be seen in the center of the Jewish cemetery in Samarkand. The construction of the cemetery was completed by his sons, David and Raphael, who became the heads of the community for the next 43 years after their father's death. But let's get back to the history of Samarkand. In 1868, the troops of the Russian Tsar entered Samarkand, and based on the list compiled by the headman of Bukharian Jews, Moshe Kalantar, in 1873, there were already 168 houses in Samarkand belonging to Bukharian Jews. Vasily Radlov, a German Orientalist, claims that at that time over 1,000 Bukharian Jews lived in Samarkand. With the formation of the Turkestan Governor-General, Jewish migration from the Bukhara Emirate to the cities included in it intensifies. At the beginning of the 20th century, Jewish communities existed in more than 30 cities. The end of the 19th and the first quarter of the 20th century is considered as the golden age of Bukharian Jews who lived in Samarkand, and this is due to the arrival of a new power, the Russian Empire. History knows the facts that in many countries there were the laws that limited the rights of representatives of other religions. The Bukhara Emirate was no exception. For example, in the Bukhara Emirate, Jews were required to pay a special poll tax, jizya. They were ordered to dress in dark coats and gird themselves with a robe. They were forbidden to travel inside the city on horseback. For the construction of the synagogue, a special permit was needed, and the height of their houses shouldn't exceed the height of the houses of Muslims. But all these restrictions were soon removed by the new Tsarist government. Thus, Governor-General Konstantin von Kaufmann, having entered Samarkand on May 13, 1868, appealed to all elders, judges and merchants, noting that the Russian authorities wouldn't interfere with freedom of religion in Central Asia. In Samarkand, von Kaufmann announced, "Everyone prays as the fathers taught him. Russian law doesn't interfere in this matter. Christian, Mohammedan, Jew, Hindu, they all pray in their own way." With the establishment of the power of Tsarist Russia, the so-called Golden Age of Bukharian Jews in Central Asia began. This period didn't last long, only 50 years, from 1867 to 1917. But it was at this time that significant economic and cultural progress was observed in Samarkand and many other cities of Central Asia. Many people are probably wondering what goods were exported and imported into Central Asia, and what was the business of the famous merchants Bukharian Jews based on. For example, from Russia to Central Asia were imported leather, wool, wood, fur, horse harness accessories, paint, sugar, wax, mirrors, glass, and much more. From Central Asia to different countries were exported cotton, karakul, paper, silk, yarn, various fabrics, carpets, precious stones, spices. Many merchants also sold Chinese tea, Iranian blades, or ivory and pearls from India to other countries. In addition, Bukharian Jews, merchants, owned real estate in many cities of Central Asia. These were private factories, plants, workshops, large plots of land, shops, hotels, trading houses, and so on. Famous merchants of Samarkand include families: the Kalontarovs, Abramovs, Molokandovs, Levievs, Fuzailovs, Fazilovs, Kandinovs, Ilyasovs, Ilyaevs, Aminovs, Pinkhasovs, and others. Along with the famous headman Moshe Kalontar, this family was glorified by many of its other representatives. For example, David Kalontarov, who was the third son of Moshe Kalontar, a merchant of the First Guild, who was awarded gold medals for his loyalty to Russia and was an honorary citizen of Tsarist Russia and Samarkand. His mansion in the Makala Vostok has been preserved. There was a textile factory in Soviet times. The brothers Abram and Yakub Kalontarov owned oil mills and cotton ginning factories. Also, they owned several dozen houses in the new part of the city and the Jewish Mahalla. The Kalantarov's firm was engaged in the production and wholesale of cotton and other goods. They had trade relations not only with Russia, but also with many European and Asian countries. Abram Kalantarov was a member of the bank's board, and in 1907 he was elected a deputy of the Samarkand City Council. Like his ancestors, he actively participated in charity events. He financed orphanages, built additional buildings in the big synagogue of the Jewish quarter, and helped the poor. The Abramov family was engaged in the production of wine and vodka drinks and the export of cotton. In the 1870s, Benjamin Abramov owned a winery on Penjikent Street, which was turned into a haberdashery factory in Soviet times. His nephew Pinkas Abramov founded the Abramov Brothers trading house with an annual turnover of 3 million rubles, a very large amount for that time. Subsequently, the Abramovs owned a cotton ginnery, a distillery that produced kosher wine. The Alushayev brothers traded wholesale in Astrakhan fur and precious stones. They exported dried fruits in large quantities to Russia, and from there imported flour and furs. By the way, one of the buildings in the center of Samarkand has survived to this day and serves as intended. This is the Bath House number 1 on Amir Timur Street, the former Frunze. Nisim Ilyasov was the owner of a cotton ginnery, warehouses, shops and stalls in Samarkand. He was also engaged in breeding purebred horses. The Issakarov brothers' trading house had its branches in the cities of Bukhara, Samarkand, Kokand, Shakrisabz, Tashkent, Balkh and even in Moscow. They were selling manufactory, sugar, silk, yarn. Their trade links extended to Western Europe. The Issakarovs were among the first to visit Paris. Abo Kimyagaro was the manager of the famous German company Barai, which traded in wholesale tea all over the world. One can talk for a very long time about the large merchants of Bukharian Jews and to devote a separate video clip to each family. In 1871, Russian topographers drew a plan of the city of Samarkand. The outlines of the Bukhara Jewish quarter were clearly visible here. The quarter was arranged surprisingly well, taking into account the laws of urban planning and climatic features. Here the direction of the main streets were taken into account, from east to west, and small streets from north to south. That is, the planning was carried out taking into account the windrows and protection from the sun. The entire quarter was covered by a network of irrigation systems in the form of large and small ditches, which supplied water to several cows' reservoirs, from where they took water for drinking. In summer, the winds from the surrounding mountains blew the quarter, bringing coolness. Two central streets, today Tolmasov and Kujum, went to the Obi-Mashhad River, where gardens and vineyards were located along its banks. By the end of the 19th century, the Vostok quarter was like a town in a city. It had all the necessary infrastructure: schools, baths, craft workshops, a bazaar and much more. In 1890, in the center of the Jewish quarter of Samarkand, the Gumbaz synagogue was completed, which still exists and functions today. The houses of Central Asian Jews consisted of residential and household parts located along the perimeter, usually small courtyards. The blank walls of houses with small gates overlooked the street. Mehmankhana was the most elegant room of the house, often serving as both a living room and a synagogue. In the houses of the rich, in front of the Mehmankhana was built a high terrace, Ayvan, with wooden carved columns and painted ceilings. Since the end of the 19th century, the houses of big entrepreneurs in Central Asia were built according to the European model. Some of those large houses are still preserved in cities such as Kokand, Tashkent, Samarkand and Bukhara. In 1894, in Samarkand, Jews owned 47 houses in the city center, in the so-called Russian part. At that time, the cost of such a house exceeded 1,500 rubles. To compare this amount with the present, you can calculate. The average salary of a worker at that time was 5 rubles a month. Thus, it becomes clear that only very rich people could afford to buy or build such houses. Here are some examples of such houses in Samarkand, which speak of the wealth of their owners. Two-storied house, built in 1913, with a facade in the classic empire style, located today on Jami Street, former Soviet. Currently, a kindergarten is located in this magnificent mansion of Princess Abramov. Several houses were owned by the sons of Pagiel Leviev. The most striking of them was the mansion on today's Shokruk Mirzo Street, opposite the former Cooperative Institute, where a printing house named after Morozov functioned for many years in Soviet times, and now it houses political and public organizations. Shalomo Sofiev once owned the Grand Hotel, the best hotel in the city, located on Mirza Ulugh Street. Today, the Union of Trade Unions and other organizations are located here. Several houses in the Russian part of the city belong to the merchant Natan Iskakov. The most luxurious of them was located opposite the Grand Hotel. Today, the city's architecture department is located there. David Kalontarov owned several mansions. The most elegant of them now houses the branch of the National Bank on Firdausi Street, formerly Engels. In the Jewish Mahalla Vostok, there are also some beautiful houses in the typical Oriental style preserved. This is, for example, the house of Yakub Zavulunov, which was converted into the Rabbat Hotel. The owner of this hotel has kept the house as authentic as possible. The Mehmankhana living room is especially luxurious, where all the decor is still in original condition. But the most striking example of the houses of the rich Jews of Samarkand is the luxurious mansion built at the beginning of the 20th century, in which none other than the last Tsar of the Russian Empire, Nicholas II, was supposed to stay. An old two-story house made of fired bricks, where the Samarkand Regional Museum of Local Lore is located today, was built at the expense of the merchant of the First Guild, Abram Kalontarov, one of the wealthiest people in Samarkand of that time. He is the grandson of the famous Samarkand headman Moshe Kalontarov. Only for the construction and decoration of the living room was spent 16,000 gold rubles, and the total cost of building the mansion cost Kalontarov 130,000 gold rubles, which is an incredible amount in the realities of that time. For comparison, we can take a cow as a conventional unit. One cow then cost about 10 rubles, which can be converted into dollars, and this will amount to $350. And the house was worth 13,000 cows. That is, to date, more than $4.5 million would have been spent on the construction of such a house. The style of the mansion harmoniously combines European and Eastern architectural traditions. The house was built by the Russified Austrian architect Otto Nelle. The interior was created by the leading architects of Samarkand. In 1916, the estate of the merchant Abraham Kalontarov was ready. Such royal luxury during the construction of the mansion was due to the following fact. Abraham Kalontarov knew that the emperor of the Russian Empire, Nicholas II, was going to make a trip along the Trans-Caspian Railway and visit, also including Samarkand. The merchant planned to invite the Tsar to his home, and that's why he planned the construction of this unique mansion. However, the Tsar wasn't destined to see this house. In 1914, the First World War began, and then, as we know, other events followed that prevented the king from making this journey. After the completion of the construction work, the merchant settled in a luxurious mansion with his family, but lived there for only a few years. In the 20s of the last century, Abraham Kalontarov signed a dedication to the transfer of the building to the new Soviet government. From 1925 to the 30s, when Samarkand was the capital of the Uzbek SSR, government offices were located here. In Samarkand, old people tell, even after the merchant Kalontarov handed over his mansion to the new Soviet regime for free, he often visited his former house and told the interested guests of the city about its uniqueness. From 1981 to the present, expositions of the Regional Museum of Local Lore are located in the Merchant House. The house is under the protection of the state and UNESCO. Unfortunately, the tough collectivization policy of the Soviet Union took away almost all of these luxurious houses and turned them over for public buildings. They were turned into kindergartens, schools, clinics, state institutions, etc. All these luxurious houses testify to the merchants who achieved such heights and fortunes only by their painstaking work, sensitive mind, and patience. These houses are more than 100 years old, and they still stand and keep in themselves the history of the great sons and daughters of Samarkand.